Well, good evening. I've just come to the end of 5 days of working on a book up here in the Lake District with a friend of mine, and we're writing a book with 60 short answers to big questions about God, faith, Jesus, the Bible, and so on. So it's been amazing 5 days of writing and hill walking. But he's now left, so I get an evening to myself here before heading home to the family. So it's great. I get to get back into the Fellowship of the Ring on my read through, and I've come to the chapter 3 is company. And there's a lot going on in this chapter, actually. The Shadow of the Past, which we were before, has a lot packed in. But chapter 3, we see the hobbits get out of Bag End. They're off. They're making for Buckland at first. And there's so much in this chapter. Partly, one of the things I find very moving is there's Frodo's kind of goodbye to the Shire, really. He's walking the paths. He's walked many times before with a sense he might not be back. And there's this theme running through kind of Lord of the Rings, particularly the Hobbits, that maybe the Shire will be lost. We'll see that at the very end of Return of the King in the chapter The Scouring of the Shire, the cost of saving the world. But kind of Tolkien foreshadows that now, this theme that actually maybe to save something, you got to give something up. But they're out in the woods. We have the first kind of encounter with the Black Rider. And so that's quite exciting, kind of hint of that. And then we have an encounter with the elves. And that's what I want to read. I want to read the last 2.5 pages of the chapter and just comment on a couple of things. It's beautiful, this conversation that Frodo has with Gildor, the leader of this group of elves. And then we read this, as I like to, and just pull a few things out for you. So they spoke of many things, old and new. And Frodo questioned Gildor much about happenings in the wide world outside the Shire. There's a theme, actually, that Frodo's quite unusual. The hobbits are quite insular. Many of them just don't really even pay much attention to the fact there is a world beyond their borders. But Frodo's unusual because, of course, he's related to Bilbo, and Bilbo has an interest beyond the Shire. So Frodo questions Gildor about the wide world beyond the Shire. The tidings were mostly sad and ominous, of gathering darkness, the wars of men, and the flight of the elves. And at last Frodo asked the question that was the nearest to his heart. Tell me, Gildor, have you seen Bilbo since he left us? Gildor smiled. Yes, he answered, twice. He said farewell to us on this very spot, but then I saw him again, once again, far from here. He would say no more about Bilbo, and Frodo fell silent. You do not ask me or tell me much that concerns yourself, Frodo, said Gildor, but I already know a little. I can read more in your face and in the thought behind your questions. You are leaving the Shire, and yet you doubt that you will find what you seek or accomplish what you intend, or that you will ever return. Is that not so? It is, said Frodo, but I thought my going was a secret known only to Gandalf and to my faithful Sam. He looked down at Sam, who was snoring gently. That's one of those lines that is very simple, but I find that very moving, that Gildor knows the cost here. Frodo has so many things on his heart. Will he succeed? He doesn't at this point know the quest. He doesn't know that his ultimate destination is Mordor. All he knows is that he's heading for Bree and he's going to meet Gandalf there. That's the plan. But he's also very discerning, and he already has this sense that this may be a journey that's one way. And we're going to pick that theme up again in Return of the King. The secret will not reach the enemy from us, said Gildor. The enemy? Said Frodo. Then you know why I'm leaving the Shire? I do not know for what reason the enemy is pursuing you, answered Gildor, but I perceive that he is, strange indeed though that seems to me. And I warn you that peril is now before you and behind you and upon either side. You mean the riders? I feared that they were servants of the enemy. What are the Black Riders? Has Gandalf told you nothing? Nothing about such creatures? Then I think it's not for me to say, lest terror should keep you from your journey. For it seems to me that you have set out only just in time, if indeed you are in time. You must now make haste and neither stay nor turn back, for the Shire is no longer any protection to you. I can't imagine what information can be more terrifying than your hints and warnings, exclaimed Frodo. I knew that danger lay ahead, of course, but I did not expect to meet it in our own Shire. Can't a hobbit walk from the water to the river in peace? But it is not your own Shire, said Gildor. Others dwelt here before hobbits were, and others will dwell here again when hobbits are no more. The wide world is all about you. You can fence yourself in, but you cannot forever fence it out. My word, what a line. remember, I think there's many things here, but one thing that always echoes in my mind is that we need to remember that Gandalf, that Tolkien was one of what some people have called a group of traumatized writers who had been through World War One and had seen what that kind of mechanized evil looked like. And that affected them profoundly. It affected people like Lewis. C.S. Lewis was deeply influenced by the war, and Tolkien too, influenced by the war. And I think there was that sense, wasn't there, back then, that at the beginning of that era, that perhaps countries like Britain thought, like, we can ignore it, we can stay out of it. Certainly that was the case in World War II. And of course, Tolkien's writing this after World War II. We sort of thought, well, evil's over there, we can ignore it, it's okay, it doesn't affect us. And Tolkien is sort of introducing the theme here, no, if only that were the case, if only it were the case, you could shut the cosy doors of your little world and it would all be okay. And there's a warning here to all of us, really. I suppose I'm reminded of the other, much more contemporary writer, Martin Luther King, who famously said, well, quoting others, all that is required for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. And maybe in this case, all that's required for evil to triumph is for good hobbits to do nothing. You can't keep evil out. It's coming for you. I know, said Frodo, I know. And yet it always seemed so safe and familiar. What can I do now? My plan was to leave the Shire secretly and to make my way to Rivendell, but now my footsteps are dogged before ever I get to Buckland. I think you should still follow that plan, said Gildor. I do not think the road will prove too hard for your courage. There's another theme in Lord of the Rings, courage, that even the very small, like the hobbits, can be courageous. C.S. Lewis once said that courage is the key virtue because it's the virtue of all the other virtues at the testing point. You may think you're honest, but it isn't until you've really been tempted to lie. You may think that you are faithful, but until you've really been tempted to cheat on somebody, only then will you know if you have the bravery, the courage to hold the line. So courage, another big theme that we're going to see throughout the 3 books of Lord of the Rings. Too hard for your courage. But if you desire clearer counsel, you should ask Gandalf. I do not know the reason for your flight, and therefore I do not know by what means your pursuers will assail you. These things Gandalf must know. I suppose that you will see him before you leave the Shire. I hope so, but that is another thing that makes me anxious. I have been expecting Gandalf for many days. He was to have come to Hobbiton at the latest 2 nights ago, but he has never appeared, and now I am wondering what can have happened. Should I wait for him? Gildor was silent for a moment. I do not like this news, he said at last. That Gandalf should be late does not bode well, but it is said, do not meddle in the affairs of wizards, for they are subtle and quick to anger. The choice is yours, to go or to wait. I love the fact, by the way, that here's Gildor. He's an elf. He's been around for a long, long time, thousands of years potentially. He's got great wisdom, but even at this point, he doesn't force that upon Frodo. It's your choice. I can advise you. I can give you some hints, some counsel, but ultimately, it's got to be your choice. You're the one who's got to live with it. It is also said, answered Frodo, go not to the elves for counsel, for they will say both no and yes. Is it indeed? Laughed Gildor. Elves seldom give unguarded advice, for advice is a dangerous gift, even from the wise to the wise, and all courses may run ill. But what of you? You have not told me all concerning yourself, and how then shall I choose better than you? But if you demand advice, I will, for friendship's sake, give it. I think you should now go at once, without delay. And if Gandalf does not come before you set out, then I also advise this, do not go alone. Take such friends as are trusty and willing. Now you should be grateful, for I do not give this counsel gladly. The elves have their own labours and their own sorrows, and they are little concerned with the ways of hobbits or of any other creatures upon earth. Our paths cross theirs seldom by chance or purpose. Oh, there's a little line, isn't there? In this meeting, there may be more than chance, but the purpose is not clear to me, and I fear to say too much. We saw that earlier, didn't we? This theme of providence that runs through the Lord of the Rings, that things that appear to happen by chance. Frodo has just apparently bumped into the elves in the woods, but Gildor is wise enough to go, oh, there is something bigger going on here, even though he's not fully sure what it is. There is no mere chance. There is something else going on here. I'm deeply grateful, said Frodo, but I wish you would tell me plainly what the Black Riders are. If I take your advice, I may not see Gandalf for a long time, and I ought to know what is the danger that pursues me. Is it not enough to know that they are servants of the enemy? Answered Gildor. Flee from them, speak no words to them, they are deadly. Ask no more of me, but my heart forebodes that ere all is ended, you Frodo, son of Drogo, will know more of these fell things than Gildor Inglorian. May Elbereth protect you. Elbereth, by the way, Elbereth, one of the Valar, the sort of angelic spirits that lies behind the world of Middle Earth. For all that, you need to go and read the Silmarillion. That's for another time. What's interesting, though, on the one level, Tolkien sort of keeps the religious element of Lord of the Rings, the world of Middle Earth, very much in the background. But providence is there. Protection is there. Good and evil are there. And here we get this little hint at prayer that call upon the name of Elbereth, and protection may come. And if you think through to the end of the Lord of the Rings, if you know the story, very interesting that name is also called upon there in the darkness of Shelob's lair when all appears lost. So just Tolkien hinting at the idea of prayer, calling out to a greater power. But where shall I find courage? Asked Frodo. That is what I chiefly need. Courage is found in unlikely places, said Gildor. I love that line. This is such a crucial line in Lord of the Rings, that one of the big ideas that Tolkien is bringing in here is it's the smallest and the weakest, the most unlikely. You know, why is it that ultimately the hobbits managed to get to Mordor and take the ring there and destroy it? It's because Sauron cannot be bothered with something as small and insignificant as hobbits. He completely overlooks them. They do not factor in his plans. They don't get through because they're, cunning or clever or, sort of Middle-earth secret agents or anything. Primarily, it's because of providence, prayer, and that evil has its eyes elsewhere. And therefore, the very, very small can do things that perhaps the greatest can't. Courage found in unlikely places, said Gildor. Be of good hope, sleep now. In the morning we shall have gone, but we will send our messages through the lands. The wandering companies shall know of your journey, and those that have power for good shall be on the watch. I name you elf friend, and may the stars shine upon the end of your road. Seldom have we had such delight in strangers, and it is fair to hear the words of the ancient speech from the lips of other wanderers in the world. Frodo felt sleep coming upon him. Even as Gildor finished speaking, I will sleep now, he said, and the elf led him to a bower beside Pippin, and he threw himself upon a bed and fell at once into a dreamless slumber. Well, there we are. That's the third chapter of The Fellowship of the Ring. 3 is company, and so much in there. One of the things I've said repeatedly in these videos, I love rereading The Lord of the Rings for a couple of reasons, really. I mean, every time I read it, I see something different. It really is a magnificent book because of the depth. But also, a friend of mine once said, I read Lord of the Rings regularly. Why? Because I want to understand the modern world. We live in a world that tends to think myth and fairy tale, they're just escapism. Escapism takes you out of the world. Tolkien, Lewis and others like him wrote myth like this to take you into the world, because you can see issues like good and evil and courage, bravery, friendship. You can see them much better when you focus them, when you bring them into sharp relief using the lens of the story. So yes, that the Shire and hobbits may have been made up, but what they represent, the values they represent, the virtues they represent are very, very, very real. So read Lord of the Rings to understand the modern world, to understand good and evil, to understand yourself, and to understand maybe there's a bigger story into which your little story fits, just like Frodo's little story fitted into a bigger story.